there was an idea that I had that we could actually do something to get these ministers to start talking about realities of what is actually happening here in Australia. So here we've got people running around with masks on their faces because people are being told if they don't wear a mask, they will be fined. And then you have a situation where there are acts of slavery, acts of torture, acts of genocide, and this is in our legislature. Now, Australia tortures. Australia murders people and they enslave them through these mental health acts. Victoria's mental health act being one of the worst in the world because it's so many people are subjected to it. And if you look at the stats of how many people are subjected to the Mental Health Act, it is around a quarter of Australians. But Australians, we're 99.9% silenced. Those people protesting, you see them, they're protesting, oh, anti-mask. I mean, what exactly is that about, do you think, being anti-mask? It's just saying, oh, I don't want to wear this thing that you've said if I don't wear it, I'll get fined. That's nothing. That's just part of the medical orders that are what do you even want to call them? There should be no forced medical orders. That just shouldn't occur. And that is the protest you should be doing. I mean, you want to protest masks? Oh, now you're talking really covert stuff. And let's not go there for the moment because I don't want to visit that one just yet. I want to talk to you about the stuff that happens to people who get subjected to forced psychiatry. And that is one of the things, if they speak about that, they get subject or have been so far subjected to forced psychiatry. And it doesn't matter which way they speak about it, it has occurred. Now we've got to a point in Australia where things are crunching a bit more. The justice scales are like, how can there be policing when the police traffic and they do people smuggling for the psychiatrists who enslave people and torture them for diabolical forced human experimentation. So here we have a situation, no one is going and protesting and doing that. However, I'm not too interested in being hauled off and jail because I've been put through forced psychiatry, and I want to be able to do the things that can be done in the best way possible. And if government's asking us not to travel, not to stand on Parliament, there's too many barriers in the way. So while I say, okay, you guys, you want to protest the mask and you know, you are anti-mask and you're anti-lockdown and then you've got medicos that come in and get their little apps. They're adapted apps, so they're not actually the apps. They've done some sort of programming stuff on it, and that stuff. All right. So then you have, and they're usually, you know, pharmaceutical reps, influencers, psychiatrist linked, clinical psychologist linked. They're usually medico-mafia linked, these organisers. And you see protesters and they're all moving like little kind of robots, you know, and you think, what's happening there? And if you're not thinking, what's happening there, well, then you're not really looking like some of us do. And I guess the reason I look at things that way is because I have studied performance and know what actors and stuff do. So, not that I do that sort of stuff now, but way too difficult. No one's doing it at the moment. Everything's been shut down. What are those people going to do? Not even a comedian on YouTube able to make people laugh at the moment. There's nothing. What can they laugh at? The whole idea of telling jokes and stuff, and when some serious murders have happened via route from the comedy to people's homes that have involved hacking of apps in phones. So there's all that going on. And then there's a simple thing that's very overt, and it's this: abolishing forced psychiatry and looking at the mental hygiene industry, what that's done, the eugenics base of that, from the time when they first started marketing those toxic fumes. Now, as a person that has had to wear a mask with a carbon filter because people pour on these toxic fumes, as a person that has seen people who have suffered horribly because of years of breathing in toxic fumes in closed office spaces, I see these industries that are directly linked to forced psychiatry as one of the most horrible things that is happening now that is not spoken about. So forget the masks, forget that whole covert thing that I was touching on before, because I don't really want to go into it too much, as I don't know enough about that sort of stuff, and I might mislead you totally. Which may be a good thing or a bad thing. I have no idea which way you want to go on that. Let's just, throw that one away for a second. The whole leave that to the people who do force work, all right? And just think about this, an easy thing. The acts of slavery and torture that are the Mental Health Act of Victoria, New South Wales, ACT, and Queensland, Northern Territory, Western Australia, South Australia, and of course New South Wales and Tasmania, they could so easily be immediately repealed by the state ministers. But the interesting thing here is those acts are null and void because we have anti-slavery. This is a crime in Australia to enslave people, and especially for forced human experimentation. That's one of the most diabolical ways of enslaving people. So, and as for what they inflict on people, the psychiatrists, when they force these things on them, how they break people through that torture, you really got to think these acts, they could just be null and voided, just like that. And suddenly we would have a justice system, we would have policing that isn't so messed up in the medico orders, doing the bidding of the medicos who are bloody evil. So I'm just wondering if, ScoMo, the leader, Prime Minister of Australia, like nickname, he could just say, these, by the way, these medico acts, we can just null and void them, can't we? And we can just perhaps go back to a sort of society where security was not so insecure because when you've got machines that are supposed to be legislating for human rights or justice, you can't have such grievous inequality where you've got psychiatrists in these high positions doing acts of slavery and at the same time trying to arrest people who are doing acts of slavery. You can't have police doing people trafficking, or that's not, that gets a bit weird. It's called people smuggling. They're doing people smuggling to the psychiatrist. You can't have them doing that and at the same time catching people smugglers. Can you? No. You can't. So, to a machine, that is really confusing. How would a machine be able to do that? So the huge problem, and Australia's had this horrible, horrible issue for 200 years. They've always enslaved and tortured people in Australia. It's just got worse and worse and worse. More and more people of the population, so that we've got a quarter of the population fully enslaved by the psychiatrists, not allowed to in any way get free, and broken under torture into saying that they agree to it. And believe me, when a person is broken under torture, that's across the board. That's what the people who enslave and torture do. They break the person, and that's what psychiatrists do. So when you've got that, and it's been going on for years and years and years, and the population just sort of forgets that it's happening or fears ever speaking about it, you have a situation in Australia where you're saying, okay, what's happening here? And that's, for most people, they're in this sort of indoctrinated state of thinking that the medicos are actually doing something for society. When way back in the 1886, people really criticised medicos far more. They knew what they were about. They knew that scam buggery, They knew that. So it's got to the point now where we have this situation with these medicos, and the population dares not talk about it. But they have to. They have to do that because everything else gets stuffed up. For instance, I live in a small town where suddenly the council has decided to issue this thing where they're saying that our heritage screenscape is to be moulded and changed to these other specifics that have nothing to do with what's been there for a long time and is has good upkeep, and there's no reason to in any way to change that. So all these strange things happening in society because the machines that are now operating as part of society, and we didn't used to have that to this extent. So we've got all these machines operating as that, what do you want to call it, matrix? I don't know. Whatever you want to call it, okay? You got that happening, and you got to say, well, you can't have a justice system when there's not a justice system. You can't deny that slavery and torture is happening when it's happening to a quarter of the population. Just because it's happening behind closed doors, and just because you call it medicine when it's not, doesn't make it not slavery and torture. So everything's out of whack. And it's not just Australia. So Australia is one of the worst places, and Victoria's in the worst, apparently. That's why it's been totally locked down in Melbourne and the rest of the Victoria. So you've got this happening in the rest of the world as well, in other places where they have legislated for psychiatry, and yet they're claiming to not enslave and not torture members of the population for profit and power. Not in the overt way that forced psychiatry does, and they're claiming that, but they are doing that, just like Australia is. So look, we're going to really get with it and just sort of start talking about the truth a bit more here, because I'm just watching Parliament and I'm just thinking all they're talking about is where's the money, where's the money, where's the money going here, where's the money going here, and that's nothing. So who's moving things here? So maybe the press. When are they going to start talking about reality? To have this, okay, this COVID war, or whatever you want to call it, or this lack of abolishing for psychiatry, to have this right happening here and now, and being covered up again and still by propaganda, but like with ridiculous propaganda that the people, that's totally threadbare, transparent, obvious propaganda. So World War II coughs and sneezes, spread diseases would have been more profound, and loosely sink, that kind of thing, you know. Anyway, I hope I haven't said anything that's too far-fetched for people who panic or anything like that. But there it is. That's what I'm saying. I want these mental health acts repealed, and so does the rest of the people in Australia, before 2022, when Abolish Psychiatry will be a fully formed party, and we will have people running for candidates in each state territory, so we can get the job done that's needed, get truth told, and stop this corruption, this scum on top.